Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. My name is Daphne. I'm Sifted's French tech reporter. I'm also the lead writer of our AI and deep tech newsletter, where we tend to talk about European tech sovereignty fairly regularly. So if you enjoyed the discussion, make sure you sign up. A warm welcome to today's Sifted Talks, which is hosted in partnership with Proton. We're going to be talking about, as I said, potentially the one of the hottest topics of the moment, certainly of the week, how European businesses and organizations can reduce their reliance on foreign technologies and particularly US tech. So for many years, Europe has been aware of its overdependencies on the US when it comes to tech. But in the past 2 years specifically, we've seen a rise in this awareness amid increasingly tense geopolitical tensions between both sides of the Atlantic. We're now hearing about the possibility of the so-called digital kill switch, by which the US could turn off or disrupt access to critical technologies, which would leave Europe in a pretty sticky spot, to say the least. Just as an illustration of how quickly things are escalating, we had the prep talk for this webinar just over a week ago, and even between now and then, the situation has changed quite fast with the news at the weekend that Anthropic was going to, well, had actually cut access to some of its best performing models following orders from the US government to suspend use of the technology for foreign nationals. So I guess that was the first example of the kill switch happening in real time, and just a show of how quickly things are moving at the moment. So back to what we're going to be looking at in this webinar, specifically, how can European businesses prepare for this type of situation? How can they build resilience into their technology stack and do that without sacrificing performance and capabilities? So to look into this, I'm joined by our panel of experts, which come from various different parts of the sector, actually, so bringing loads of different perspective to this problem. Kai Zenner is the head of office and digital policy advisor at the European Parliament. Cristina Caffarra is the founder and chair at the EuroStack Foundation, which is a non-profit that was born out of EuroStack. EuroStack being an initiative that launched in 2025 with the support of dozens of companies and industry experts. And the idea is to boost European sovereignty by developing European technologies across the stack. So not just in cloud and AI, but also chips, software, and so on. Raphael Auphan is the Chief Operating Officer at Proton, a company many of us will know that offers key services like mail, drive, VPN, and security for consumers and for businesses with a focus on privacy and security. I'll mention as well, because I think it's relevant to our topic, Raphael, that before joining Proton, you were the CEO of Quant, which is a French search engine with a similar focus on privacy. So seeking to provide alternatives to systems like Google, for example. And we also have Fabrizio Pirondini, who is the co-founder and CEO of Xoople. Xoople is a Spanish startup that's building a system to record what you call Earth data. So capturing heaps and heaps of data about the Earth and its surface, feeding that into AI models to help them understand the physical world. We'll get started in a second. Before that, just a bit of housekeeping. Please submit your questions using the Q&A function. The questions will be upvoted and we'll discuss the most popular ones. So there will be no standalone Q&A at the end of the discussion. We'll be taking questions throughout. So please do submit using the Q&A box. So let's get started. I think maybe always good to get started with a little bit of context. I've mentioned already the kind of geopolitical context, the rise in tensions that has been going on for the past 2 years, the rise of the risk of this so-called kill switch, the Anthropic news from last week, and this topic of sovereignty and of having to build in resilience has certainly been a big political topic, I'd say, for the last few years. We've seen the tech sovereignty package come out of Brussels just over a week ago. We can maybe discuss that at a future part of the conversation. The whole point of that was to enable Europe, push Europe, boost European tech so that Europe could reduce its reliance on foreign technology providers. My question now is, to what extent are we seeing these political concerns coming into the business world? To what extent are we seeing businesses actually take action at the moment to reduce the dependencies? What are you guys seeing? Maybe Raphael, you can get us started because you're actually a provider of an alternative for these businesses.
Yes, so thank you for the intro. Yeah, so what we've seen is that for decades, the sovereignty debate will already happen in like policy papers, in ministerial speeches, but it has changed in the last 2 years, where basically CTOs and chief information security officers, CIOs, are either driving initiatives or are being asked by their boards and management to drive initiatives, because it's all a question of moving from a political will to risk and dependency management. Like CIOs really are looking at now at their technology stack, saying, okay, how much of my technology stack do I depend on foreign providers? The kill switch is a possibility. Downtime is a possibility. So how do I put in place a program where within 1-2 years I can get a strong reduction in risk on this dependency? We did a survey, like a technical survey around all the public listed companies in Europe, and it came out that 74% of listed European companies across all countries in Europe rely on email services from US providers. 74%. So when you are at this level, it's not a partnership. It's a full dependency. So what's really key is that, yes, in the past 1 year, 2 years, accelerated in the last 1 year, we've seen a lot of CIOs approaching us saying, okay, I have my entire email stack on US big tech. I have my entire productivity suite on US big tech. I want to put in place a plan to really migrate. I mean, it's not immediate. I mean, these are some, like, this is still a significant project. But 2 years ago, these discussions really were more wishful thinking, except for a few sensitive industries. Now it's become much broader. So we've seen a big pickup. For example, in Denmark, when there were like all the Greenland pressure from the US government, from the Trump administration, we saw a 100% rise in sign up in Denmark for a solution. So really, we can, in a way, thank the current US administration to have made the sovereignty question like center in CIO's mind. Again, it's not only political will, it's really about risk and dependency management.
And what are the kind of priority areas that you're seeing C-level executives focus on the most? There's email, and Proton provides various different types of services. Are there kind of like key categories where these dependencies are, more important and more critical and weighing more on the minds of these executives at the moment?
Well, for us, these are 3 categories, but we are only one part of the overall stack. But one is productivity and communication. So we launched Proton Workspace, and we had a very good welcome on the Proton Workspace product. Then there is AI. We have a lot of, I'll be able to talk more about that, I think, later, about one financial company adopting our Lumo AI product, because they're not comfortable putting a lot of confidential stuff on Copilot, on Claude, or on ChatGPT. And then there's cybersecurity tools, because when you provide a cybersecurity tool, well, you are very deep into the security infrastructure of the company. So I would say for us, but we're only one of the providers, it's basically email productivity and communication, AI, and security, cybersecurity.
Okay. Cristina, EuroStack launched with the support, as I said, of quite a lot of industry players, so corporations, big and large. What are you hearing from the business world at the moment?
Not enough. I hope you can hear me. I'm sorry. I'm in Viva Tech, and so it is a noisy environment, but thank you for having me. I want to push back slightly on the notion that the main motivation for what we're doing here is somewhat security and resilience. That is a defensive stance. That is not entirely the position of EuroStack. What we need to understand is that Europe is super powerful, and we are not going to be belittled in a position of middle powers. This is important, not just for security and defensive reasons, but it is because we have a very fundamental problem with economic growth, with our economic model as a continent, that we need to update to current circumstances. We are no longer 10 years ago. We might have talked about sovereignty on and off for 10 years, the circumstances of the last few years, of the last 2 years in particular, have changed dramatically, not just because of Donald Trump, but because of the much bigger global macroeconomic situation in which Europe is subject to a lot of adverse winds. We are in a situation in which we are a digital colony. We do not own our own means of production when it comes to digital. We're not capturing the value. There is no economy that can grow while not capturing the value of the assets on which it is built. So the bigger narrative that Europe needs to absolutely internalize, and it is slowly happening, is not just, oh, let's defend ourselves from Donald Trump. I find that very diminutive, very reductionist. It is much more, we have enormous talent and capability on the supply side. We have a massive amount of demand. We are rich as God, and we have capital. Why on earth are we allowing ourselves to be belittled in positions like middle powers? We can't make it. We can't do it. We are 90% dependent on hyperscalers. What am I hearing from business? Not enough, not remotely enough. The supply side is ready. The demand side is beginning to move, but it's also lazy, inert, captured, and not sufficiently motivated. They need to get it, because unless the demand moves, we are not moving. We are just talking. I do not believe that governments and institutions can make us a market. This is entirely in the hands of the private sector. Private demand, capital allocation. These are the things we need. And unless they move, we're just knitting.
Okay, great. Well, that's a good lean into kind of my next question, which was going to be the how you can do that, how you can, as a business, step up to reduce your dependencies and reduce your reliance on foreign technologies.
Well, you need to want to do it first. And we don't see enough wanting to do it. This needs to be internalized. In France, where I'm in at the moment, the position of the demand side, SIGREF, is quite officially that they don't think this is yet a problem for them. So unless the demand side wakes up to where we are and the fact that they need to play a part, then there won't be enough of a shift. Now, that said, and I'll conclude, there are signs that are encouraging. There are signs that some are moving and considering migration. Not enough are mentioning it because there are threats from hyperscalers to those who declare publicly they have migrated. So it is beginning to move, but not fast enough. Capital is beginning to move. We need to see much more of that happening. Please let us rescind this mindset we have that somehow the Commission must do something, the government must do something. They will never do enough. They will never do anything very useful. So let's move on from this mindset.
And do you think that the events from the weekend, and this is obviously a question to the whole panel, the events from the weekend, the fact that we had a very real example of a technology that of access being suspended to a technology, granted it may not be a critical technology for everyone, but the bigger picture is what if this happens with other technologies that are critical? Do you think that has been a bit of a eye-opening moment or wake-up call?
How many wake-up calls do we need? How many? I mean, we had the judge in The Hague. We had multiple other episodes. I think the hysteria over the weekend over something that we in Europe don't even use very much, it had been launched very recently, so nobody's really left high and dry, was excessive. And all of the torrent on public media, on social media about a wake-up call. Come on, guys, we had wake-up calls for years. And we had them daily for the last 2 years. So no, I think that the motivation needs to be another one, needs to be one of assertion of European capabilities, of our own power, of our own strengths, and not one of subjects of another continent. That's it. We don't need wake-up calls. Come on, what is this?
So how does that resonate on the business side, Fabrizio? I can see you
Yeah, so I found
wanting
that,
to intervene.
yeah, it's an interesting point of view, Cristina. So I would say, so I'm the founder, CEO of a startup. That's the third startup that I create with my team in Spain. So we have been doing that for 20 plus years. We don't need wake up calls. We're pretty awake. But the point is that it's as you were mentioning, it's all about motivation. So we are starting, growing, running a business, and as a business, we need the right tools for the job. So our company is based on a mix of satellite technology, cloud, big data, hyperscale, and AI. The reality for the kind of global project that we're doing is that the only partners that can have that kind of technology at that scale are US partners. So we have, unfortunately, mostly US partners because there are no alternatives. I don't think that the alternatives are there because the European industry is lazy or they don't want to do it. It's just that the economics of developing solutions that fight against the biggest companies on earth, those hyperscalers from Europe, are something that cannot be done by sheer will alone. So we need capital. We need European capital deployed at the scale at which the Americans deploy their own capital to develop their own startup infrastructure. And that doesn't necessarily just have to be public capital, of course. But still, without the access to capital that is available in the US for these companies, it's very difficult to compete. And still, of the three pillars of our company, two of them have actually seen a kill switch because Anthropic kill switch has been pretty popular in the last few days. But a couple of months ago, the US government actually implemented the kill switch on satellite imaging companies, preventing basically to distribute images of the Middle East. So we experienced ourselves two of our three pillars had been kill switched effectively. So again, we would love to have European alternatives. We are working with European partners to help them create the demand, but developing solutions that can compete globally with the US hyperscalers or even sometimes with the Chinese ones is not something that we can do by sheer will alone. It's a structural constraint that we have in Europe.
I don't think I'm talking about sheer will, okay? Let's not just kind of characterize the argument as that. The issue is, of course, if you frame it as, do we have AWS equivalent today? Do we have Microsoft equivalents today? The answer is no. We have very, very many pieces of that puzzle. It depends entirely on the user case. You may have a user case in which you cannot do without some of these solutions. I know of thousands of user cases in which alternatives are economic and qualitatively capable. So let's not throw everything in one single bag. There is a ton of nuance in here, and no one is suggesting that we need to invest the trillion that the US is throwing into AI in order to be able to compete. Of course, we are not the same. We are not going to do the same, nor are we going to replace American technology with European one. The issue is, are we going to sit here and continue to admire the problem and tell each other, oh, we don't have a capital market union, and until we do, we sit on our hands? Oh, we don't have a single market, and until we do, we sit on our hands? No. There is capital now. There are enormous capital pools out there. I was in a room with 18 pension funds accounting for 3.8 trillion in assets under management. They can fluidify that capital. Much of it is there. Europeans save twice as much as Americans. We send 300 billion to the US every year for VC investment. This is the unacceptable face of what Europe is doing now. Private demand and capital are not moving fast enough. I don't wait for governments because they are mostly useless. And I don't want to wait for them to do anything. But there is a ton we can do, and I absolutely reject the idea that, we are not on the same level. Of course we are not. We spent 20 years regulating instead of building. Whose fault is it? The Americans? No, it's on us. But we can't also sit on our hands.
Bringing in a question from the audience here. Sorry, Kai, I'll let you speak.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Maybe I just wanted to bring the politics a bit in and also answer to your question. So I share the feeling with Cristina, like so many points I share with her, that, for example, when I heard about Anthropic, it was not really newsworthy for me. It's things that we or many people that work on this topic know for many years there were hundreds of wake-up calls, there are hundreds of papers that are basically repeating the same points. That being said, to bring a bit of positive mood, let's say, in the discussion, it is a case, and it's going also back to your first question, that let's say discussing tax sovereignty or also thinking about tax sovereignty, especially in politics, was a really niche topic. And indeed, in the last years, it became one of the key topics. Many parliamentarians, many national governments are now much more looking into it. And finally, we see also a bit more of a strategic thinking and also the realization by governments that they cannot fix everything, and they should actually not fix everything or try to fix everything. So also in line with what Cristina said, in most cases, initiatives completely run by the state or even partially run by the public sector, like Gaia X, ended in a disaster. So also here, yes, I'm with Cristina that it's something the market needs to solve mostly by itself. And again, I would say most actors in politics do understand this point now and do not try to lead the whole discussions and so on. What I'm a bit missing still is that when it comes to, let's say, governmental support of the industry, it's still a mess. Yes, strategy came in. We are doing everything with much more strategic thinking, but it's the same old when it comes, for example, to let's say private public partnerships or public investments and so on. We are just basically pulling out our money, throwing it at quantum computing, but without really thinking, okay, in which part of quantum computing we are doing good, where are European companies that are leading, and then why not supporting them? Why are we shooting a lot of money in areas where it doesn't really make sense from a strategic and economic perspective? So this, I would personally say, is really something where governments and politics needs to learn, and hopefully will learn over the next years. But again, to my first point, I'm rather positive because finally this whole awareness that the European Union was lacking when it comes to tax sovereignty, it's growing, it's finally there. So the starting point is much better now compared to 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah,
Raphael, did you want to add something?
I want to add a comment. I mean, I agree with Cristina on the fact that yes, Fabrizio, your use case may be very specific, and for your use case, you may have the best in a US tech solution. Now we have real world example that many companies were able to switch to European alternatives. For Proton, we have 100,000 organizations which have switched to Proton over the past years, and more recent cases. I mean, I have 4 which come to mind. Like a press organization, 100 journalists, they just said, okay, we were on Google Workspace, we want to migrate out of Google Workspace towards Proton Workspace, and they are switching now. We have the largest co-working space in France, like thousands of people in the co-working space. They migrated all their password security, password management to Proton out of a EuroStack. We have a financial firm in Luxembourg. They were using Copilot and Claude. And they said, okay, well, we're not comfortable anymore putting all the confidential information going across the Atlantic and on GPUs in the US, okay, because it's not secure enough. So they migrated to Proton Lumo. And also very recently, like a 5,000 person NGO, non-governmental organization, put in place a plan to migrate out of Google Workspace. So it's not going to be immediate. So they first implemented Proton as a business continuity solution. and then they are going to slowly deploy in country per country. So my point here is that yes, there may be specific cases where it's difficult to really tick all the boxes. Then there needs to be a mindset change, because we like CIOs of more established companies need to go away from what existed. I mean, 20 years ago, there was this sentence of nobody gets fired for choosing IBM. Now, the current sentence in the last 10 years was, okay, nobody gets fired for choosing AWS or Google Cloud or Azure. There needs to be a mindset change towards that, because I still think that there's the risk there. There needs to be mindset change, but there's the risk there of having like so much dependency, 90% dependency on the cloud providers in the US, and of having such dependency on the email infrastructure in the US.
I'll bring in a question from one of the people in the audience that I think actually speaks back to what a lot of you have said, which is about the big gap between talk and action. And so what the question says is, biocycles are slow, many projects stall, and companies still default to large US vendors. So why is Europe still moving so slowly here? Is it mainly risk aversion, procurement, internal incentives, or something else? Would anyone like to jump in on that one?
Well, in the way we are experiencing that, frankly, there is a lot of incentive-related constraints here. So we are trying to build as much a European tech stack as possible. So even if we had to start with a lot of US components, we are trying to help develop and anyway try to switch to European alternative all across our end-to-end solution as much as we can. So there is a big push, I think, not just on us, but in general on European companies to try to use as much as possible a European solution. Again, it's a problem of incentives. If the US solutions are just easier to adopt or are more widespread, or they allow you to reach wider markets, and there is a tendency there. And in general, there is a complexity, I think, in adopting purely European solution yet. I think this push towards a sovereignty and the resilience that we are seeing in the last few months, it's probably going to help us keep that balance and allow us to develop, maybe in a relatively short terms from the tech point of view, a solution that is actually a European integrated tech stack. I think we are all working towards that.
Maybe I can offer a perspective on this, because it's not like we wake up and all of a sudden, I was at an event in Denmark and the Prime Minister said, Europe finds itself in a position of a laggard in tech. Finds itself, like it snuck up on us. We didn't know. We didn't see it coming. No, the real reason, to respond to your viewer, why we are where we are, is that fundamentally we spent the last 15 years regulating what we do not own. The narrative in Europe was solely, we are going to tame big tech. We are going to control their power. And we spent all this energy trying to do antitrust and regulation of Google search, of the Apple App Store, of the Amazon e-commerce store. And we seem to have been in a sort of bubble dream that was going alone to somehow give us an industry, a market. Now, how does regulating Google search give you a cloud? How does regulating or pursuing the Apple App Store give you a software industry? Not in the slightest. These things are orthogonal. Years, and I know it because I'm an antitrust economy and I was as deep in that end as can be, was Margrethe Vestager with bicep emojis, Breton with bicep emojis, saying we are taming big tech. And the next question was, and what? Because big tech was asking, including me, but how are Europeans thinking about this? Yeah, you carry on and give us a 4 billion fine for Google search. We'll pay it with the chocolate biscuit budget. But how does that give you a cloud? Oh, you know, you Europeans carry on, just so cute, go and do these antitrust cases. Don't even talk about building. Meantime, We are absolutely carpeting Europe with data center, with connectivity, with assets that you don't own. Be my guest. And the entirety of the continent fell into this reverie that somehow if we did that, we were going to have an industry. So it's on us. Because to the point that was made earlier, it's not that the American assets are magnificently, splendidly wonderful, and we are just idiots who are doing something inferior. Not true. They are very good at what they do, which is distribution. And in a very capillary way, they have absolutely pushed themselves into every cranny, nook, and corner of the market. And of course, switching away is hard. They have been extremely effective at doing what they do, which is distribution, then capture, then lock in, and people cannot get out because they're locked in. It's not innocent, but at the same time, they've done what they needed to do. They captured the market. We were asleep. So let's not just kind of pretend that this is something that somehow happened and we were doing our best. We were doing nothing. And now we have an enormous catch up to do, but at the same time, it is possible because we are not poor. We are not defenseless. We are not helpless. We are not technically stupid. We can do it.
Raphael, could you talk us through a little bit more how Proton is approaching this? So I know you've got fully, you own your own infrastructure. You've got, could you tell us a bit more about the degree of resilience that you've managed to build in at Proton? What were the challenges of that, and what kind of learnings can be taken from that for other businesses who wish to reproduce similar thing?
Yes, so I think initially Proton decided to develop its services on its own infrastructure in Europe, not for a question only of resilience. I mean, the company was started 12 years ago. The company positioning was and is still about security and privacy. So it was very key for our customers to have like the guarantee, the trust that they can have from Proton that the IP address, the data that is stored by Proton is not residing somewhere else that they would not trust. It would be impossible for us to rely on a US cloud provider because our customers would not trust us. So this initially came from a privacy and security angle, and that now has built into another advantage, which is independence from any US tech. So if there is any US cloud disruption, we're not affected. Our services still run. So our customers, that's what they are looking for. They are looking for both the privacy and security that they can get from us with the end-to-end encryption, with the own infrastructure, but also the fact that we don't rely on any US infrastructure, any foreign infrastructure, US or Chinese infrastructure to deploy our own services.
Can you talk us a little bit through the challenges of that, if there were any, of building your own rather than going to the easy off-the-shelf American technology provider?
Well, the challenge is to have the internal talent to have the entire stack. So we will not expect every company to build its own internal stack like we did. So we have our own infrastructure. We have our own cloud provider internally for our own services only. We don't offer this cloud outside. It's just our own cloud. And this is about close than 10% of our team. We have 650 people across Europe, and about 10% of this team is running our own data infrastructure in Europe. And so that's the challenge. And the challenge is then to hire the talent to run this infrastructure efficiently and to retain this talent. So these were the key challenges.
Okay, so unlike for Fabrizio, sorry, go ahead, Fabrizio.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, if I may, I mean, I think Cristina, we all agree on why we are at the point in which we are. So we all agree on the analysis, but then how do we move from here? How do we solve the problem of, okay, let's try to become competitive again in the global.
You want me to answer?
Here. And
I have the answer. Go ahead.
I think maybe Fabrizio, if you want to go ahead first. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we are companies, so we have to provide the best service to our customers. So there are customers that are starting, as Raphael was saying, that are starting to ask for European, if not complete stack, at least very deep tech stacks, which is great. So we are really trying to comply with that and try to develop that as much as we can, helping that. That's both on government side and enterprise side, by the way. We need to provide business continuity. And again, all these kill switch episodes are against that. So a more regulated European framework is going to help our business. We are getting support from governments, in particular the Spanish government, but in general, they try to push us towards a more European tech stack. But again, it's about we're a company, we're a business, so it's about having the right motivations to do those changes. What Kai was saying before of directing part of the extremely significant funding that the EU is spending towards commercial solutions, towards the startups that are growing, towards the company that are developing those systems instead of just purely maybe pure R&D or purely developing techs, that would help a lot. In general, we need to provide companies with the right incentives that don't have to be constraints. They don't have to be punitive. They have to be something that actually helps us collectively create this flywheel effect within Europe.
Yes, I think someone in the audience did ask a question that links back to that, Fabrizio. They said, "Can Europe realistically claim technological sovereignty when many of its most ambitious startups are encouraged or required to incorporate in the US as a condition of raising growth capital? Is the real bottleneck technology, or is it ownership and capital formation?"
In my experience, as of today, if you want to become a very large tech companies, very soon in your process, you need to go to the US for capital. So there is a lot of capital in Europe, but that capital is extremely risk adverse. And so it's not deployed in the kind of disruptive startup companies that are the ones that could really scale up and that are not even, I think, readily accessible to companies like Proton to the level that they need to actually become global players. So I agree with the fact that as of today, unfortunately, we still need to go to the US. This is changing. This is changing almost in real time. So that may not be the case 6 months from now or 1 year from now, luckily. And we are experiencing that in real time at Xoople. But still, that has always been a huge constraint for the development of tech startups. It's just enough for you to see how many unicorns are there in Europe in deep tech and how many are there in China or in the US.
Well, look, I mean, we're talking about things we know very well. This has been the discussion for the last however many years. Europe hasn't got the capital. We haven't got the incentive to stay in the in Europe. We know this to death. It's we've had this problem forever. I'm interested in how we're going to get out of it and how we're getting out of it significantly. And the narrative that somehow we are stuck in a position in which we cannot move forward, either because the others are better, either because we don't have the incentives. Look, at some point, we need to move. And either we continue to watch this and watch it unfold, and I absolutely refuse to take the position that what has happened, what has been, will be. We are not there. We are not there. The world is moving forward. In addition to the sort of the security and resilience narrative, which by now I think everyone gets, there is an imperative in Europe to establish and to assert ourselves. I keep saying we are not a middle power. We are a superpower. Can we please start thinking and acting like that? The mindset is fundamentally important. So we've had this discussion about, people still go to the US. Okay, fine. We know, we've said that for years, but it is changing. Capital is fluidifying. There is going to be a EuroStack catalyst fund in which funders and capital allocators are putting monies. VCs are moving. The Financial Times said at the weekend an article saying sovereignty may not be entirely achievable, but it is a good investment. Capital is moving, and we've got more money than God, as I said before. So let's also not delude ourselves as to what sovereignty is. No one in the sovereignty movement thinks that we should be aiming for 100% replacement of US assets. No one is saying that. And all of this narrative about protectionism, autarky, and decoupling is nonsense. No one is saying that. But can we have a share of our market that is bigger than nothing? Please, And that is on us. It is not on the commission, on the governments, on the institutions, on the bureaucracy. There is a tendency in Europe to just be infantilized looking at mummy up there who's got to somehow sprinkle money helicopter style onto our industry. Forget it. Go get capital and invest and do it and sell it. It's not a dream, it's happening. People are shifting. Not enough, not fast enough, but unless we adopt that mindset, we are going to be stuck in the Mark Carney view that Europe is a middle power. There's nothing that makes me madder than passive aggression of that nature. We are not a middle power. You, Canada, are a middle power. Go hold hands with Singapore, not with us.
So,
Any reactions to
also,
that?
okay, sorry, yeah.
Cheers. Yeah, maybe to complement and to support things that both co-panelists said before, I would agree with, let's say, the status quo assessment from Fabrizio, but basically also with what he and Cristina said about that things are really moving. Let's say, me as a German, I'm really astonished to see that, let's say, our old industrial companies are changing their mindset. Even certain car makers and so on are now doing quite unusual investments in the startup ecosystem. There is cooperation on specific products. There's a lot of talk about joint ventures. Also, banks are certainly working together, also in the field of tech sovereignty when it's about joint operating systems, Linux, and so on. So there's a lot of stuff happening. And as both co-panelists said, also there is thinking of, okay, we are now finally using our money, our family owned companies in Germany are actually doing quite a lot. There are companies like Schwarz that are doing huge investments. So definitely we are going here in a good direction. I would also warn, however, similar to Cristina, to now be distracted by activities or statements from the European Commission, because now starting with a positive, also the European Union woke up and finally tries again to complement or finalize the banking union, our capital market union. There are those funds that are being created. Cristina was mentioning one of many. So there are also here a lot of activities, but I would share a more negative view when it comes to the timeline, because even though there is now start of activities, we all know how slowly the European institutions are working. Probably member states will interfere at some moments and will stop the process because of national interest. And it would be really a shame if those positive aspects, positive developments that we are now seeing in the private sector are stopping because companies are feeling, governments will help us soon. The European Union will fix everything, so we don't need to do it anymore. So this would be, again, one of the major risks that I see. And I really hope that this positive trend in the private sector is not stopping in this way.
Raphael, I'll let you come in, jump in just after, but just sharing with the audience that Cristina had to leave to attend a panel at VivaTech where she is right now. So apologies for that. She won't be joining the conversation back. Raphael, open to you now.
Yeah, no, so the comment I wanted to share is that, I mean, there needs to be a mindset change. I mean, it's improved for sure, but there needs to be a further mindset change. I mean, so Europeans, we need to believe in our ability to address the infrastructure needs that we have. But I see like a start of a positive change, and I agree with you, Kai, that it would be a shame that it's just a small fire and then in 1 year it disappears. Now the positive thing that I see is that the angle of risk management and dependency, and that's where I may not be fully aligned with Cristina's views. This angle has really is really now much deeper in IT organizations. I mean, we've seen, and that was totally new in the last 1 year. We've seen organizations come to us saying, "Okay, I have 36 applications with Microsoft. Now I have this multi-month project. It's not going to be a 6 month project. And 36 applications from Microsoft is a big project. But I'm going to, I have a roadmap, a timeline roadmap to migrate this application, email is one, and then multiple applications over timeline. So this real internal IT roadmaps, this is something new. And so hopefully, yes, it will last, and I have a good feeling it will last, and that's where the mindset shift is important. But we have positive signs that it's here to stay and to grow.
Yeah, you're touching upon something I did also want to talk about, which is the more pragmatic side of things as well. You mentioned a roadmap, you mentioned timelines. I think obviously we've been talking a lot about the bigger picture of how we can create alternatives in Europe and whether we can, how realistic it is for companies to be able to switch to these European alternatives rather than rely entirely on foreign providers. But in the kind of day-to-day, if you're a business today who wants to reduce your dependencies, how would you advise going about that? What's the first step? Is it assessing, where your vulnerabilities are? Is it defining what sovereignty even means? Is it what kind of timelines should you have in mind? What are the kind of pragmatic, actual, tangible ways that businesses are thinking about this today?
And I would say it really depends on the size of the organization. So if we have like small and medium businesses, when you have a lot of those using Proton, it can be pretty quick shift of the workspace infrastructure. It's planning. It may take a month or two, and then migration can take a week or two. So it's not a major project like it is in large organizations. So in large organizations, mid-sized to large enterprise businesses, well, it's about having a proper map of all the key IT assets around the company, and then say, okay, which one I'm going to prioritize, which one is going to be a major difficulty to switch, which one is going to be quick. So it's working on this map of IT assets and saying, okay, which one do I prioritize over a 6 months, 12 months, 24 months period. So we see IT companies doing that, but this is really about it, having a proper clear map and then prioritizing on this map which ones are going to be prioritized. And to stress on one point that Cristina was saying, yes, sovereignty is not about moving from 100% US tech to 100% European tech. It's more about having alternatives and being sure that on all the key elements, on the key components, European players, European companies have real local European alternatives to choose from. So Proton is a proof that it can happen. I mean, it's at a modest level, but still 100 million users on the B2C side and 100,000 organizations on the B2B side. And we don't have VC capital, so we are self-funded. But so it's a proof, but we need many other proofs. Well, one thing maybe to mention at the ecosystem level, one thing that worked well in the US is also some consolidation towards key players, and I think that's something that will be key also for CIOs to be able to say today it's a fragmented market with all the technologies available, but it's a fragmented market, and that's why it's way more comfortable sometimes to go to, okay, I have one player that covers everything, and so there will be a need for consolidation in the European markets on a different part of the stack.
Yeah, it always goes back to fragmentation in Europe, doesn't it? But sorry, go for it, Kai.
Yeah, if we have time, just two small additions. So completely agree with Raphael. And at today's panel, I am unusually positive and optimistic. But just to underline that here, Daphne, your question was about especially smaller companies and startups and so on. I do see when it comes to tech sovereignty a lot of good developments when it comes, first of all, to trade associations. So in Germany, for example, also company networks like the German AI Association or Applied AI, but also the bigger ones like BDI and Bitkom, they are actually providing nowadays lists of best practices, of ways how you can become more resilient when it comes to certain tech offers and so on and so on. So especially smaller players that are maybe feeling overwhelmed from all the different scenarios or opportunities, I think there they feel, yeah, for free or cheap. You need to pay, of course, a fee in order to be a member, but you get some easy support. Another second point that I want to make, and this is again looking a bit more in the future, as I said several times, the European Union and member states woke up and they are trying to push back against certain scenarios or developments. And one of the more positive points that was introduced is really this idea to use the, for a long time already existing digital innovation hubs. They are coming from the Digital Europe program, and then combine those hubs with regulatory sandboxes, for example, from the AI, but also with, in the future, AI factories and so on. If we are managing to build up those clusters where in the future the public sector is coming together with the private sector, again, it's all about helping each other, creating best practices, also create some, let's say, regulatory learning. I do believe that those clusters, for example, in Germany, it would be wise to build something in Karlsruhe, in Aachen, where we have very strong tech universities, that those places could again be almost optimum for startups to, at the same time, build their product, to have a dialogue with regulators, so to not be scared about fines, but at the same time, in this community, also be able to work together with other companies in terms of tech resilience or tech sovereignty, learning how other companies are doing certain things and so on. We are not there yet, but again, potentially we will have there a huge positive step in the next, let's say, 2 to 5 years.
Yeah, Fabrizio, did you want to add something?
If I can just add something here. I mean, I think that there should be a way that for European companies, selecting a European tech stack is not just a philosophical choice. I mean, there has to be an advantage of doing that. There has to be a set of incentives to do that, because at the end, we are running businesses, and we have to provide to, at the end, to our customer the solution that they need and that they want. So I have a huge faith in the European capabilities of developing companies, on creating startups, or developing the tech. What I'm frankly seeing that is lacking here is the validation of the fact that investing in tech sovereignty and in resilience is actually a good investment. So I think the thing that would help us the most would be a set of let's call them incentives that actually make the European capital market invest in tech sovereignty and tech resilience. The capital market is very rational. If they perceive that they are better off investing somewhere else, they do that. So the investment in European tech sovereignty and tech resilience must not be seen as a pro bono thing, or as an ethical or philosophical choice. There must be a real economic benefit in doing that. If we can unlock that mechanism, then I think everything else on the tech side, on the industrial side, on the startup side will be fed appropriately, and it will develop by itself. I don't see the lack of that in Europe.
Yeah, I think we do hear it often, that the best tech that's made in Europe shouldn't be the best tech because it's the most sovereign. It should be the best tech because it's the best tech, and that should be the kind of factors, or the motivations behind choosing this technology. And I'm going to jump on this opportunity to bring in a viewpoint that comes up a lot when I'm talking to various different sources about European tech sovereignty, and that is that the best way for Europe to be sovereign is to create champions that can compete with the US. And if these champions need to use the best tools out there, and these tools are in the US, then we should let them do that. And that's the best way for Europe to eventually become competitive. I'm just curious to know what you think of that view.
Well, in
especially in
our
like
case,
recent
if I can
events?
say, that's exactly the approach that we're using. So we are building a European company with a European stack using as many European bricks in our system as we can. A lot of these technological pieces still have to come from the US. We are working to reduce that amount as much as possible. What Proton is doing is a very good example of how we can incorporate some of the tech. But I don't think it's feasible to go from where we are now to developing a fully, competitive global player that uses 100% tech stack in Europe. It's a little bit too much. So it has to be a gradual process.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it has to be gradual. I mean, there are startups, of course, building your startup straight from on a cloud provider. Okay, you may see a benefit in having like straight on a US tech, but there are a number, fortunately, of startups in Europe which are also starting on a local European cloud providers. But the point is, for an IT organization, I think it goes back to having a clear map of where I am today and where I want to be tomorrow, and relying on a US cloud infrastructure today, moving to a European cloud infrastructure may mean that I may have to control some more components in the stack that I may have to replace by a component that I was relying on the US cloud provider, and I need to control that stack with a primarily open source stack. But then that means, as an IT organization, I need to control that component. I need to understand that component. So it goes to, okay, I need to take the risk, or I need to invest and take the risk and say, okay, I'm going to migrate to a European cloud stack, which has more bells and whistles and more like everything included approach. And I'm going to have to control these components, and I may have to hire talent to develop and maintain these components, or to at least maintain them if it's open source. So it brings more control. It's not only about Europe, and it's having more control on the components, but it means more investment.
Oh, did you want to add
If
something, or can I head to the
yeah,
next question?
if I just compliment very shortly, I think especially for politics, it's extremely dangerous if we allow to come, to come a comeback of the thinking of, okay, I don't know, we want to replace Facebook, we want to create a European version of that, and we will now need European big tech companies in that and that area. So basically always being reactive and trying to catch up. Especially now I'm talking really with a focus on EU policy making. We have Horizon, we have Digital Europe program and a lot of other investment programs. And I find it really shameful, again, that still a lot of money is being spent for those things that are already existing. And again, trying to catch up instead of focusing much more on the next wave. So new tech, future tech, and so on. Because I think in certain areas, we should just accept that others were better. And as long as those parts of the tech stack are not extremely important, as they are a kind of baseline of also future technology, then, well, we can maybe, as Raphael was saying, having a kind of open source layer as a fallback option. But again, I think especially when it comes to public money, we should do the investments not in the here and now, but really trying to then become leaders of new technology in the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. But also that would require a complete change of mindset in policy making, because we need to catch up idea is still very strong.
I agree with that. I mean, just to add a comment on that, I mean, like the US for the last 20 years, the US government level and companies felt very strongly about US first. China did the same. And 20 years ago, the automotive industry in China was like a subpar. I mean, if you wanted to buy a Chinese electric car 20 years ago, it would be a leap of faith, or even 10 years ago. But now they invested, and they went in a China first approach. And so we see US doing US first, China doing China first. And in Europe, we need to go towards Europe first.
I see you nodding, Fabrizio. I'm assuming you agree with that.
100%.
Great. Well, I think that's all we have time for. So sorry if we couldn't get to your question, but thank you to everyone who joined. Thank you to the panelists, of course, for their insights. Thank you to our partner Proton for their support. And yeah, hopefully see you for the next Sifted Talks, which you can find at sifted.eu/talks for the next ones that are upcoming, or you can follow the link that we're dropping into the chat box right now. So yeah, it's been my pleasure moderating this panel. Hopefully you found it interesting, and see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.